Hello and welcome to 3 Minute Gaming. I'm Nathan, and today I'm going to tell you if this game's worth their time and bandwidth. Today's game is Yakuza 5 Remastered. 5th Yakuza 5 protagonist is the biggest Yakuza yet worth playing today. Let's find out. Yakuza 5 Remastered is like its predecessor, an HD and 60 FPS version of the original PS3 game with minimal quality of life improvements. And like Yakuza 4, the number in the title is the number of protagonists. The whopping 5 this time, and they each have their own areas, and the whole game's in a new engine. Let's cover them all real fast. Kazuma Kiryu, series protagonist, is depressed because everyone he loves keeps having problems when he's around, so he runs off, leaving the orphanage to try and start a new life as a taxi driver in Nagasugi. However, when Daigo Dojima, Tojo's 6th chairman, disappears, Kiryu gets roped back into the Toho clan's endless problems. Kiryu's fighting style is generally the same as always, and his minigame is a non-crazy taxi minigame where the goal is to follow all traffic laws until he gets into street races, which yes, that happens too. Taiga Sajima is back in prison because apparently he loves it there, but quickly uncovers a conspiracy, so he's got to bust back out. He ends up first in a mountain village where he does his main minigame, a sort of hunting survival thing, before getting dropped into Tsukimino, where he tries to uncover the truth behind a key character's murder. He plays similarly as Yakuza 3, and you're only in his main town for one chapter. Haruka and Akiyama share a part, with Haruka being the first playable female character in Yakuza. Haruka gets pretty much forced by her producer Park to being an idol, and the whole thing is beating a bitchy idol rival T-Set by playing a rhythm minigame with the same song 1,000 times. She also can't do any actual battles, but instead does dance battles to raise her stats, with her big side con being a bunch of idol-related minigames. Akiyama is also there in Sotenbori, where his combat has been nerfed, and he doesn't get a minigame, but hey, at least he's around. Tatsuo Shinada is the last protag in Kenicho, and there's a washed-up baseball star hounded by loan sharks. As he starts to dig into why he got blacklisted, people around him start getting murdered, leading to an intriguing mystery that doesn't have much to do with the main story plot-wise, but thematically ties to Haruka in some interesting ways. His big side content is gaining stats with batting cages, and his fighting style is based around weapons. Unlike Yakuza 4, where every character's chapters are only a few hours long, in Yakuza 5, each section is way longer. The game is absolutely loaded with content, and it's less clear how everything is interconnected until the very end. The level up system has changed again, this time a hybrid of 4 in the original 2 games, which is less customizable and does have a level cap of 20 until you reach the final chapter. The other change is using weapons now levels up skill with those weapons, and higher tier weapons require higher skill to equip, basically attempting to balance you getting super powerful weapons early since you can't use them. And honestly, not much more to elaborate on here. The game looks better than 3 and 4, and it's easily the biggest Yakuza game until Like a Dragon rolled out. But does more mean better? So what do I like about Yakuza 5? Well, the combat is really great here, even if Akiyama got nerfed, with the same batch of unique fighting styles from 4 paired with Shinada's new weapon-based combat. It basically improved on everything that was lacking in the previous PS3 games. Additionally, having 5 huge areas to explore is mind-blowing, with Kenicho in particular being a blast to explore with its giant park and unique environment. And lastly, Tatsuo Shinada is one of my favorite characters in the franchise, and I loved his section even if it almost has nothing to do with the overall main story. He's like a prototype Ichiban but sleazier, and makes her a fantastic underdog. His section has a great mystery, some devious hooks, and is incredibly well paced. When it comes to the bat, if I were to describe Yakuza 5 in a word, it would be bloated. The game's story has serious issues, with the middle section in particular being very slow, and the minigames requiring so much grinding it can push the game to a crawl. Speaking of that side content, Haruka's section almost made me abandon the game. Don't get me wrong, I love rhythm games, but Haruka's entire shtick around playing the same song with the same charting over and over again, with you only unlocking 2 new ones near the end of her whole section, is tedious. And don't get me started on Sajima's prison section. And lastly, while I really like the diversity across the areas, it's clear that the design of them suffered a bit with how many they had to make. Tsukimono's layout completely sucks, and Nagasugi suffers from not having enough alleyway shortcuts to make traveling enjoyable. As you know, every game sharing on a 3-point scale: must play, maybe consider, and don't bother, and Yakuza 5 is a bit of a difficult game for me to rate. On one hand, it has an absurd amount of content, tons of ambition, great combat, and Shinada steals the show. On the other hand, the pacing drags a lot, half of the large minigames are tedious, and Haruka and Sajima's sections are just a slog. That being said, it isn't remotely bad, just bloated, and the story, once you get to its hits, has some of the highest points in the franchise. So if you enjoy the Yakuza games, and don't mind one that drags its feet a little bit, you will still love Yakuza 5. And that's all I have for you today. Thank you so much for watching. What do you think about Yakuza 5? I know it's a lot of people's favorite Yakuza, but I want to know what you think in the comments. And regardless, if you enjoy the series, make sure you go out there and play Yakuza 5.